board to change its zoning to accommodate apartments. They haven't gone to the planning board yet, right?
Yeah, I'm getting
Haven't seen
echo. So,
We hadn't seen this before.
is this better?
And we're not changing the zoning either.
No, but you know, I guess I didn't get back to the Times Union, so they didn't have that context. I'll take the hit on that one, but
Yeah, and also they're wrong on the rents. It said the rents are starting at $12.95. According to the documents, I think the studios are like something like $795 or something cheap like that, 800. Unless that was the old units.
Martin Hull.
Okay. Let me put some lights on here so I can see.
Good evening.
How are you?
Miss Gayard, how are you?
Hi, Glenn.
Hi, Al. I'm here.
Oh, kind of dark.
Okay. Who's is Jasleen handling the microphone for public comments and the timer and everything?
Yes, yes, I am.
Hi, Jasleen.
Hello.
Hello, Martin.
Hello, how are you?
Okay.
Good.
They're all panelists. Hello.
Hello, Martha. I got an email from Chris Ellis that said he will try to attend. I don't know what that meant exactly, but maybe he's got a meeting that's blending into our meeting. And I haven't heard from Roman, but I'm assuming he will be on soon. We have a few minutes still. Oh, Roman's calling me here. Hi, Roman.
I didn't get a chance today to look at the Dropbox.
Roman will be on shortly.
Hi, Brad. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Roman.
Hello, Roman.
Okay. I think we have 4 of our 5 planning board members, and I think we'll begin then. Jasleen,
Okay.
tell me when you're ready for everybody to be hooked in.
Yeah, I believe we're ready to go if everybody's ready.
Okay, thank you. Well, good, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Albany City Planning Board. Today, our planning board meeting will be for a workshop, a regular meeting, and a hearing. I want to go over the procedures before we begin. Also want to welcome our planning board staff, our planning director, Brad Glass is here, and also then Jasleen, a staff member, will be handling the electronic and technical components of the meeting. We have Martha Mahoney, our corporation counsel, with us, along with Martin Hull, Glenisa Gayard, Roman Cuchera, and me, Al DeSalvo. I'm the chair. Some rules of procedure to begin. We'll first have our workshop. The purpose of the workshop is for the planning board members to review projects that are brand new and just on the drawing board or not yet ready for public meetings or hearings. It's also for us to get familiar with new projects or get familiar with projects that were on the agenda before but may have changed. Those discussions are between the planning board staff and the planning board members only. But of course, the public, since this is a public meeting, are welcome to listen in to hear the discussion. For clarification, from time to time, the planning board members may want to ask a representative of the applicant to clarify something if necessary. For planning board meetings and hearings, we welcome public comments. The procedure for the planning board meetings and hearings is that the presentation will be made by the applicant. If it's the first time that the applicant is in a planning board meeting or hearing, he has or she has 10 minutes to make the presentation. If it's a project we've already seen, the applicant has 6 minutes to make the presentation. At that time, after that time, the board will ask questions. Then after that, either the planning staff will give its comments and recommendations, or depending on the project, we will entertain public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes or to 6 minutes if a common council member is wanting to make a comment as they represent the larger area where the particular project is located. However, although we're welcoming comments from the public, we do encourage every member of the public who wants to comment on a project to give us written comments. That way you could expand a lot more and be a lot more detailed in your ideas and concerns and support. And it will give us a permanent record that we can put in a file and be able to easily access when we need to, or when the public needs to. After the comments by the public, as I mentioned, the planning staff would give its recommendations. In most cases, it is after public comment. Then finally, after that, the applicant can have three or 4 minutes to clarify any questions that arose, or any factual issues that may have been brought up that needs correction. So with that, we will begin. And the first item on the agenda is in the workshop, 1379 Washington Avenue. And this is in a mixed-use community urban district. And the request is to convert a 55,000 square foot hotel into a 100-unit multifamily dwelling. This is a new project, and we haven't seen it before. And therefore, we will be seeing this later, of course, in a planning board meeting. So Brad, you want to give us some background?
Yeah, sure. And I think we can click to the next slide, but this is an extended stay hotel on Washington Avenue, proximate to the University of Albany University campus, the Harriman State Office campus, and the number of other hotels, offices, and some newer dormitories that were constructed in this area. As Al stated, is an MU-CU zone. Go to the next slide. Consists of 2 buildings with, this is the existing conditions. 2 buildings on the site, each with 50 units. It's largely a rebranding proposal. There's no major site changes. They're only adding some, outdoor seating, landscape, amenity areas, and some of the existing open areas on the site. Most of the change, to the extent that there's change, would be internal to the building. Mostly upgrades and some shared amenity spaces. And the existing units already do have kitchen, bath. I believe, I don't know if they're outlined on these plans, but they have submitted an affordable housing compliance plan to set aside the required number of units for the project, which at a, it's a 5% requirement. So that would be 5 units in the case of this project.
Yeah, they're in purple on the.
Oh, excuse me. Al figured it out. Yep. So mostly studio apartments. I think the next slide shows it, 74 studio apartments and 4 1-bedrooms and 22 2-bedrooms. The reason this is before the board is, conversion to a multifamily dwelling of a commercial use, which, hotel is a commercial use over a certain number of units does trigger a major development plan review by this board. I believe it's 20 units. So otherwise, this is a project that wouldn't necessarily be before the board, but because of that trigger, we're here. Go ahead, Al.
Oh, Brett, the one thing I couldn't figure out when I was looking at the plans in the Dropbox and the applicant's submissions is that they have here 4 1-bedroom units, but it looked to me like everything in the floor plans were the 2-bedroom units and all studios. I didn't see any 1-bedroom. So they might have changed the plans, but it's not reflected in the documents that I saw. So it's just something that you might want to clarify. Unless I
do.
missed the place on it.
Will do, and I think I did see Joe from Redburn on the call if we did need any clarification. I don't know if you were looking for an immediate answer on that, but we'll certainly look into it.
Yeah, I just think it needs to be consistent.
And, you know, some of you may have seen there was an article in the newspaper today about this particular property and some of the naming proposals and how that all worked out. If you're interested in taking a look at that. Be called the Astro Apartments. And that is
Any
related to
questions?
the Jetsons, from what I understand.
Any questions from the board?
Nope.
One other one. Are they going to actually renovate the property, or are they just doing a conversion? You know, other than maybe painting the walls and refurnishing the units. Are they actually going to physically change the building? Maybe just the 2 bedrooms, but I was wondering if all the studios that they show there are the same as the extended stay suites that they have now in the building.
You know, I'm pulling up the project folder here, and I'm just gonna look at their total project cost. That might sort of be indicative of the amount that they're going to. Oh, well, it says 0. So I have to imagine it's more than 0, but you know, again, it's pretty much set up to go. I know they have been renting it out in sort of an extended stay capacity already to students in some cases. So I'm going to guess that it's already in pretty good condition, but I would imagine they're making, you know, at least moderate upgrades to be competitive with other units in the vicinity.
Okay. All righty. The next item on the agenda is also in the workshop, and that's 21 Erie Boulevard. And this is just going to be an amendment of the development plan that we approved on the 7th of December last year to decrease the amount of commercial space and increase the total number of dwelling units. You know, this is the former Huck Finn's warehouse, and the developers, which is also Redburn Development, is looking to, I think, decrease some of the space for recreation and add a few more apartment units.
Yep. So Al, as you indicated, the board had approved this project on December the 7th, 2021. You know, they approached us with, and there were a couple conditions on that. They are still finalizing the conditions. So, you know, when the board does act on this amendment, we should make sure that those are carried over. But relatively small change in the context of this large property. I think it's 261 to 273 units. So it's a 12-unit increase. And I believe that was prompted by a change in the tenant commitment they had for the indoor recreation space. They still do have an indoor recreation use, but it's a little bit smaller. And that led to a bit of a reconfiguration. I think on the next slide here, you'll kind of see the area that would be, was previously commercial space that would become the apartment units. Looks to me that there are about 5 or 6 shown there. So if we ask Joe for a clarification on this one, but that's essentially the gist of the proposal, going from 261 to 273 units, and in accord with doing that, decreasing the total amount of commercial space in the property.
Okay.
Let's see. I have a quick question. I noticed that we're getting 12 more dwelling units, and we're reducing the retail space by 3,200 square feet. Doesn't that works out to about 300, even less than 300 square feet a unit?
Martin, I did the same calculation, and I probably should have followed up on that because I have the same question on that. I have to imagine there's more that meets the eye, because I can't imagine we're initially doing units that small. But I I can't do much but defer to Joe if you want to let him on. We can. He's raising
Can
his
we-
hand, so I'm gonna.
We get that clarification now?
Yeah,
If Joe,
yeah.
if you can unmute Joe and have him give us a quick on that one.
If I can find him on here. Here he is. All right.
Okay, good evening to the board. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I can absolutely clarify that for you. So the reason that is because this is the section of the building with the very high ceilings where we're doing the lofted style apartments. So Brad, you're correct. You actually only see about 5 there on your screen, but then there are 6 more on top of that, or 6 and then 6 more on top of that. And for the reason for the square footage difference is that when you're in the commercial space, it would have been one wide open space, which would be 3,000. But when we do apartments, we double that up with the infill floor. So really it's, it's twice whatever we lost, we're gaining in apartments.
Okay, that makes sense.
What about the square footage?
Same thing. So, right. So 3,000 square feet of commercial is really 6,000 square feet of apartments because we do an infill floor.
Right.
Ah, okay. So we're looking at about 600 square feet rather for the those units.
Yeah, these are some studios, and I think the ones upstairs are some 1 bedrooms. They're 500, 600 square feet, smaller units.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
So Al, just one last thing. This, along with the prior case, have been referred to the County Planning Board for recommendation. And they should be back in advance of the April 5th meeting. So assuming all else is in order, we would be calendaring these for a regular meeting hearing on that date.
Okay. All right, that ends the workshop session. And we now move into our public hearing agenda. And the first item on the public hearing agenda is 97 Central Avenue. The applicant, same name, LLC, and it's represented by Hirschberg and Hirschberg. The proposal is to, in a mixed-use form-based area on Central Avenue, converting a 31,000 approximate square foot building for use as a self-storage facility. Dan, you have 10 minutes to make the presentation.
Mr. Chairman, Daniel Hirschberg from Hirschberg and Hirschberg. I'm here today representing 97 Central LLC. The building with the big star on it, we used to know as a U-Haul building. It was used for storage material while U-Haul was moving stuff around. It was converted later. It was sold to Selected Properties of Albany. They converted it to partially office and partially for book depository storage. So the building is built very robust to have storage units on all the floors. So it has very heavy load bearing and has very wide elevators to move materials from up and down. The applicant doesn't plan on making any change to the outside. This is the site plan here, and you can see there is no area where we show any pervious area at all. So this is a pre-existing project, and we would like to do it without doing any change on the outside of the building other than a small entrance on the left-hand side of the building into the parking lot. There'll be an entrance at the front and another entrance at the side of the building. Next slide. This is the first floor plan. You can see there's one entrance at the front, another entrance at the back, and then there's an emergency exit elsewhere on the site. The rental office, traditionally at these buildings, the rental office also carries some packing supplies that they can sell there, but it's strictly a very small rental office so that it'll be manned while the building is open. Next. This is the second floor. And it has a variety of different size units from a very small 5x8 to 10x10s to 10x15. So there's a variety of different users, and some are 10x20, which is the size of a one-car garage. Next. And here's the third floor, which looks similar to the second floor with a different mix of unit size. And if you go to the next slide, I think you'll be able to see the fourth floor plan, which is remarkably similar to the third floor plan. I'm showing all these so you can see how many units are fitting in there. There's a number of different units, but these are different sizes. People need different size units for storage units. Storage units is a very popular use these days. People moving out of homes, moving into apartments. They apparently don't want to part with a whole bunch of items, so they're keeping them and storing them. For people who just have too much stuff to store in their apartments or home. Next, this is the building elevation. This is the east elevation. You're looking over the top of the adjoining building to the top. And what that says is on some of the front, buildings and some of these side buildings, they're going to put some film on the windows to make it appear like the units that are behind it, so that it'll have something looking other than blank windows. And if you go to the next elevation, that's the next elevation is the front elevation. That front elevation, there's no change in the building at all, other than what we're showing as the faux storage units on a front buildings. The building is no change to the facade of the building at all. Next. This is the side one, and the one entrance near the front and one near the rear, so that people can get the units, and they're both served by elevators at both locations. And next. This is the picture of the existing building. The front elevation, you can see as it was. I'm old enough to remember when it was a U-Haul building. I don't know how many other people remember it as that, but it was always called the U-Haul building, and now it's going back to use for storage, similar to what it's used from before. As you're aware, a whole bunch of office uses are just not viable, and this building relied on a client who needed a significant amount of book storage, and are no longer a tenant for this building. So rather than leaving a vacant building, we think we've got a good adaptive reuse for the building. Self-storage is a permitted use in the MUFC zone as the conditional use permit. And I think I have one more slide. Oh no, I don't. I'm ready for questions and answers.
Dan, when this building was occupied, didn't quite catch it. Wasn't it rented out to state agencies?
Yes, it was a state agency, but most of the floor space was used for storage of records and books and other items. So there was a state agency that rented, I don't know how much the building was rented for offices, but there was a significant amount was for storage. It was an ideal building for that because the floors could take the extra load. Okay, so you don't know if they occupy more than just one floor? I'm not really sure, but I know it was only a portion of the building because Ed Swire told me they rented that building primarily for the use of, because it had the capacity to hold the storage materials.
Questions from the board? Other questions? Okay. Jasleen, is there anybody from the public who wants to speak on this issue?
There hasn't been anybody who registered in advance, and I don't see any hands raised either.
Thank you. Brad, you want to give the recommendations of the staff?
Yeah. So in reviewing this application, The first thing we often look at is the purpose statement for the zoning district in question. In this case, speaks to this MUFC zone as being a vibrant mix of residential and non-residential uses that support investment in bus rapid transit services along the corridor while protecting the adjacent lower density residential neighborhoods. It's also something we looked at when we were doing our recent updates to the USDO. While this application was submitted about 10 days prior to those changes going into effect, self-storage facility is no longer a permitted use in this district. And in recognizing both the incompatibility with the purpose statement for the district and the legislative intent, we recommended the board deny the application for a conditional use permit.
Okay, the board, do you have any recommendation, any comments to Brad about this? Any questions?
How does it work with the, I'm sorry, go ahead, Martin.
No, sure. I just was thinking myself that this is, I've always looked at this block as something that someday could really, really contain a wide variety of different uses, small spaces, live workspaces, all that kind of thing. It seems that a self-storage building is a bit of a less than ideal use for for this space or this location. Anyway, it's just my thoughts.
Roman?
I was just curious what council said regarding the timing, if they submitted their requests technically under the old USDO.
They did, and we've honored that by accepting the application and putting it before you all for consideration for a conditional use permit. Under the new code, it would not be eligible for a conditional use permit consideration. It would not be a permitted use.
Is there, okay, so I would like to hear council on this, because I'm not fully up to speed with the new USDO yet, but because they got their application in prior to the new USDO being codified, how does this work? Because under the new code, it's not permissible, but when they applied, it was.
Right.
We have to evaluate it based upon, and I apologize, I'm not counsel. If counsel wants to step in, I'm happy. But we evaluate it based upon when they applied. So in this case, they did apply when the old code was still in effect. So we were honoring this application for a conditional use permit.
So it wasn't allowed as of right in the old code either. It required a variance.
Required a conditional use
Okay.
permit. Now it
Okay,
would require a use variance. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So I guess the question is, and I think you sort of answered it, Brad, that if they apply, because they applied prior to the codification of the new USDO, then this could be allowable.
That's the decision that's before the board. Yes.
Okay.
But it's also, I think the one thing I didn't realize until I think Martin brought it up, and that is that prior to the Common Council adopting on the 30th of December, if we consider this under the old ordinance, we would have to consider it as a conditional use.
You are considering it under the old ordinance, and it is being considered as a conditional use. And those are subjects to the board's discretion on a case-by-case basis pursuant to the standards, which I could read if that is helpful. But you guys have done conditional use before, so I'm sure you're familiar with those. Under the new code, it would be a much starker standard. They would need to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and it would just be an explicitly prohibited use. So yes, under how we're evaluating it based upon it being submitted prior to those changes that would prohibit it going into effect, the board has the authority to approve or deny subject to the conditional use permit standards. and our recommendation based upon that standing would be to deny the application, but that does not mean the board is required to deny the application.
All right,
Yeah,
so in regards to the conditional use permit then, can you fill me a little bit on your thoughts on the I forget which number it is, but the character of the neighborhood, impact of the, if it falls in line with the character of the neighborhood. I didn't know that this was previously a self-storage facility, and I'm not quite sure if that is a determining factor or not. I don't know how long ago that was.
I mean, usually when, we're doing planning, we're anticipating or projecting what we want to see in the future rather than what has taken place in the past, although that's not irrelevant. Again, if that speaks to, the most viable use or the most logical use for the building, based upon the objectives of the district, which again is largely based around, supporting bus rapid transit and transit supportive development. This would not be a use that would contribute to that. So, our feeling, and I think based upon that purpose statement and some of the others in some of the other districts, when we evaluated this use in the code updates, we decided to remove it as an allowable use in certain districts where we are seeking to encourage more active, vibrant uses that sort of speak to a more walkable neighborhood. This is not to say that someone won't necessarily walk there or use transit to get there, but see this as more of people delivering items in their vehicles and retrieving them in their vehicles. Perhaps the applicant can clarify that that's, not the case, but just didn't seem to fit with the sort of more destination theme that we're trying to shoot for Central Avenue. Obviously, every building is different, and that should be considered in the conditional use criteria. I don't know, the application didn't speak to other uses that were considered, and really it's not a variance application, so it really is speaking to the use as compared against the standards. I guess in terms of the standards that it doesn't comply with, certainly I think the character of the district and neighborhood, and that's speaking to the intended character as articulated through the purpose statement. Will this provide a necessary and desirable service, contribute to the general welfare of the surrounding neighborhood and community? If the only other option is this is going to be a vacant building, I would say yes, maybe it will, but I don't know that we've necessarily concluded that to be the case. So certainly if the board would like to take additional time to consider, we just wanted to be honest and direct and not sort of drag anyone along if we sort of knew what our feeling was. And as a staff, we came to the conclusion to recommend against.
I've got, it's kind of a real conundrum because one of the things we look at is, the best use of the building, and based on its previous use, the best use so far seems to be, wide elevators, extra strength on the floors. The previous use was as a U-Haul building. And in the sense of the physical space, it seems to me that that is the best use of the building. But also, I guess I'm concerned about the marketability of something else, because this building's been vacant for a while. And I look down the street farther east, and there's another large building that was vacant for years. I think it was a former automobile showroom back in the 50s. Floor to ceiling windows, I think it was 5 stories high. And there's a check cashing service on the first floor, but the rest of the floors are vacant. And then I'm thinking also that there are a number of apartments that have been developed. We approved one on Central Avenue, close to Lark Street, and then below Lark Street in the Center Square neighborhood, there's some apartments that we have approved. And I'm thinking that there might be already market there. So, I mean, those are some of the thoughts that I've had as I looked at this. And I'm just wondering if this proposed use is not approved, whether this building will ever become marketable in the future or just sit there vacant. So I don't know. That's just some thoughts. I would appreciate any other board members' comments on this.
Yeah, I think I hear you, Al. I have that concern, and I share your concerns, but I also can share the concerns of traffic down in that area. On a good day, that area is a crap show between double parking, just the weird things that happen in that area, and I avoid it at all costs because of that. And it's a very congested area because it's a highly used corridor to get from, upper Central Avenue down to lower Central Avenue, State Building, so on and so forth. And there's, and if you want to avoid the highway. So it's sort of like, if you're not going to get on the highway, that's the next best thing. And so that, Central Avenue, especially lower Central Avenue, reflects that. Or if you work in the middle parts of Albany where there's no highway access, that's where a lot of people go to get on the highway, especially towards the, used to be Northern Boulevard. Now I can't remember the name. I always call it the Boulevard, Old Albany, this roll with me on that one. And so now we're adding a storage facility where we're looking at big trucks, not supersized trucks, but we're looking at moving trucks. We're looking at more car traffic than pedestrian traffic, because I've never really seen anybody go to a storage facility on foot with their items in hand. It's very rare. So now you have the car and all of that. So one of the things that I'm sort of missing is how they're going to work, especially with traffic patterns, and most especially if people trying to take that left into their parking lot or take the left out of the parking lot, going over at least 3 lanes of traffic.
Any other comments?
Could I address some of the concerns that I've heard here?
Well, let's first hear from anybody
Okay.
else on the board, and then you could address some of the issues. Are there
Yeah,
any others?
Yes, I think that I see some of the points that that folks are making, but when I look around the city and all the parts of the city where no one could ever imagine a building being rented and people living there, the warehouse district downtown, Park South, and just a little bit to the east on Washington Avenue. I find it hard to believe that we won't see interest in this area, especially, not that it's being done right now, but I could really see, as a streetscape program in and around Townsend Park that would completely change the nature of this area and make it a lot more attractive. So I'd like to encourage that, however we can, if we can really get that filled with people who are interested in the city and interested in improving the neighborhood, that would be a great thing.
I would mention though, Martin, that this particular property is way above Townsend Park.
Oh, really? I thought it was more or less across the street. No.
No, Townsend Park, that part of Central Avenue,
Right.
that's like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, etc. This is 97. This is at least 5 blocks west of there.
Well, I think more or less that you're right. I mean, I think more or less the same thing in my mind.
All right, I just wanted to chime in. if we're actually looking at this, then based on the old zoning before the changes, and it's a conditional use, I'd like to hear the planning department's concerns and thoughts on each of those items. That way I can make a determination for each of those 7 items. Brad, is there any way you can go through those quickly?
I think at this point, I'd rather, ask that the board defer their decision, and we can go and take a look at that, and we can consider some of the statements that Dan's made about the history of the property, and, look into some of the traffic concerns and bring this back at a future meeting. Would be my preference.
I think that makes sense. But before we do that, I'd like to ask Dan Hirschberg to make any comments that you have the right to do to maybe allay some of the fears or clarify some items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know Martin, who's the architect, has his hands up, but let me just address some of the issues. Number one, Select Properties of Albany is actually owned by Ed Swire, and his group does a wonderful job of marketing properties. They've worked very hard to market this property for other uses. They were lucky to get the state as a client for quite a while, as a tenant for quite a while, and they've had no luck to find other tenants to lease it. Regarding traffic, one of the lowest generations of traffic are self-storage units. The IT manual would probably estimate no more than 10 to 12 vehicles coming in and out of a day. Even though it's an awful lot of units, people don't go and visit their storage every day. It's, you go to it periodically when you drop something off. And this is so convenient to public transportation. People aren't necessarily moving in pieces of furniture. They might be moving in smaller things. People might arrive by public transportation and go in there, and people might even walk because there are additional housing units up and down Central Avenue. So we think it's located properly, and it falls within the purview of a mix of residential and commercial uses. This is a commercial use, and a commercial use that serves a purpose. The purpose being to provide storage facilities for people. So I think a number of the conditions are met. We welcome the opportunity to appear again, and when the planning department gives you more information on how it meets the conditional use permit requirements, but we'd be willing to talk then. I don't know whether somebody can recognize Mark Dean to speak. If you can unmute yourself, Mark. He's the architect for the project. Mark?
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Great. So as Dan mentioned, my name is Mark Dean, and I'm principal at Dean Architects. We have specialized in storage facilities for a number of years and work on them effectively all over the country. So storage has changed very significantly in the past few years, both in how people use it and in the required use of it. Previously, 10 years ago, storage units were at a point of maybe 4 or 5 square feet per capita. Now there are areas, in particular Albany even, that are pushing 10 or 12 square feet per capita. So there's been a notable increase in the requirements for storage. Storage now is used more as a retail type environment, in that they come in, sometimes even online. You can rent a unit. The units are downsized. They're not the big, although we do have some big units. The majority of the units are smaller units, 5x5 units, 5x10 units. And I'm certainly not going to say that it's going to generate the walk-in traffic. I do understand that, but certainly the traffic that comes here is not going to be large trucks, moving vans, things like that. It's going to be regular cars, pickup trucks, vans, the occasional small U-Haul vehicle. And as Dan mentioned, 10 to 12 vehicles per day is probably on the high side. If there's one or two people in this facility at any given time, that's a lot. You just don't generate a lot of traffic. The other thing about the traffic is we do have a substantial parking lot that allows, if there are 3 or 4 people here, there's plenty of space in the parking lot to load and unload into the building. The owner has done an outreach to a feasibility company. The feasibility study for this market has proven that there is a requirement for storage in this area and for a storage building of this size. So there is a need. There's a need in this area for the storage. With regard to the exterior of the building, as Dan mentioned, it's a beautiful building. And we're not doing anything significant that's going to affect the exterior of this building. It's going to blend in with the neighborhood just as it currently does. We're not doing anything to make it stand out or change its appearance on the exterior at all. So I think there's a lot of good reasons to approve this for storage. I understand the walk community. But not every building is going to function that way. Even if this went to office, if it did ultimately go back to office, I understand there's going to be a certain percentage that would be walkable, but still there's going to be a number of people that are going to drive to this as a destination for work. So, and storage really is no different than that. So I guess I don't have anything more to add.
Okay, thank you. I think that the consensus of the board, from what I heard, from at least Roman and Planisa, is that we want to defer this so that the planning department staff can give us recommendations based on each of the 7 criteria or 6 criteria in the conditional use.
Yeah. Al, I can make a motion to defer this to the next meeting. Okay, please do. Just did.
I mean, yeah, you can make a formal motion, sorry, to weigh in, or the board, it can be reflected in the minutes that no action is taken. So you can make a formal motion to defer or just have no action taken reflected in the minutes.
Well, since there's a motion on the floor, I believe Robert's Rules of Order requires us to address the motion.
Yeah, and I heard that the motion is to defer. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's unanimous. But in the meantime, since we have a little time, I would also ask that the planning board staff take a look at the zoning ordinance also and read those conditional use criteria so that we can come prepared at the next meeting. Okay, thank you. The third item on the agenda, still in the public hearing, is 271 Central Avenue. This is a new project. It's a project by Hospitality House. The representing agent again is Hirschberg and Hirschberg. The zoning district is again the form-based Central Avenue mixed use designation. And the request is to construct a 21,300 square foot addition to the present building on the site. And this is requested because it is a conditional use permit for group living. The property is at the corner of Central Avenue and North Lake. It's an attractive building, 2 Victorian buildings together. Okay, Mr. Hirschberg, you have 10 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, Daniel Hirschberg from Hirschberg and Hirschberg, and with me logged on someplace is Do Young, who's the director here, and he can chime in anytime when you need his concern. The facility currently is a 72-bed facility. It's under license by New York State Office of Addiction Services and Supports. And that bed count will stay the same. What will change is the area required under the new requirements to properly serve those 72 beds. The building size will increase from about 13,000 square feet to over 34,000 square feet. So it's a significant building increase, and that space will allow a hospitality house to conform with all of the latest regulations that have been generated. In order to do that, we'll demolish a small building at the rear, which is right underneath that star on the left picture. Next. That building to be demolished is shown there. The two buildings that the chair referred to, the attractive Victorian buildings, will stay where they are. A lot of internal modifications done to make the space function better, but the buildings will be retained on the outside. The parking area there currently has 7 parking spots, and I'll get into that a little later, what that does for the site. Next. The proposed building is that building that sticks back into the parking lot. There'll be an access alley on the east side of the building, coming in from the rear. There's the main entrance of the building, even though it'll still be a Central Avenue address, will be on the North Lake side. About halfway down the building is where the new main entrance will be. All the other entrances will be maintained for other purposes. Next. From a utility standpoint, we're doing a blue roof on the building, which retain the stormwater. We're also putting a hydrodynamic separator in to clean the stormwater before we discharge it to the sewer. This will significantly reduce the amount of drainage because that building replaces an entirely impervious parking lot, so that we are going to be significantly reducing the drainage from the site. Next. This is the view of the building from North Lake. You see it has the address 271 Central Avenue. The existing Victorian building is on the right, and on the left-hand side is our new building. And next. And this is the view from Central Avenue. That'll stay pretty much the same. And I think it's an attractive building. This is the view from Sherman Street. The new building has most of the viewscape there, and there's an entrance door, and on the left there's a gate to the alleyway that's shown on the other plan. Next. This is the floor plan, and it shows the facilities up front. It shows the entrance from Central Avenue are maintained, but they'll primarily be for staff entrances, offices, and a lot of common areas are on this floor. Next. Here we have a combination of living units and office space, and this is on the second floor. And it continues up for another floor. If you show the third floor, I think I have one more. Third floor plan continues to be pretty much the same, with a mix of office space and common areas required for office use, as well as living units. And then the fourth floor plan just shows the new building, because the other thing is the roof of the other building, because this building sticks up a floor higher than the building on Central Avenue. Next. One concern is parking. They only have 7 parking spots now, and I provided as part of my presentation a table that shows their usage of the site. There are 3 shifts. 2 smaller shifts and 1 main shift during the day. Where right now, the peak day has 19 people there. And even though there are only 7 parking spots, the rest are capable of finding parking spots on the streets that adjoin the building. In the final analysis, after it's fully completed and occupied, and it has to be done in phases so that the existing building can be maintained, existing capacity can be cut slightly to allow the work to go on, and then it will be restored to the 72-bed capacity after the addition is constructed. So at the peak, after it's restaffed, would be 30 people arriving during the main hours of service from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And this table shows it. Existing employees come in 3 shifts, and there's absolutely no parking problem with the second or third shift. The first shift, like I said, currently has about 19 people there for 4 of the days of the week, and they're capable of finding parking spots on the street. There is an increase to 30 parking spots. The applicant is proposing to enter into a universal access program with CDTA. This might encourage more employees to use the bus. There are very few employees that use the bus now, but with the capacity of having free bus service, we think that might change. Next, I think this is a photo of the building looking, that's 271 Central straight ahead with the red brick, and 269 can't be seen here because it's hidden by 271. Next is a view of the rear of the building. That's the parking lot at the rear, and there's some dumpsters there, and you see the rear of the existing 271 Central Avenue. I'm prepared to answer any questions which the board may have about anything having to do with it.
Could you go back to the Lake Avenue elevation?
I can't, but whoever's running the computer can, okay? If you go back about 4 slides, it's this elevation view or the front elevation view?
This is the elevation? No, the Lake Avenue elevation.
Okay.
No, you're in the wrong
That's-
project. Now you're back to the warehouse or that's the wrong
My
slide.
apologies. Yep, I'm coming right back to it.
Okay.
I knew it looked familiar.
Okay. You're in the right project. Now we're just seeing if we can find the Lake Avenue elevation.
Next
There
elevation.
That's Sherman Street. Okay, there we go. Okay, what I wanted to ask is to the right of the 271 Central Avenue sign, those are the doors.
Yeah.
What is that on floors 2, 3, and 4? What am I looking at there?
Those are just glass panels. There are no entrances.
They're glass panels.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think that's the current design to have the fenestration there. Again, this is a preliminary building elevation. We're certainly willing to discuss it, and then the architect can discuss it further regarding the goal there, but that enters into a connection area between the 2 buildings because there's a grade difference between the 2 buildings, as you see from the floor, from the first floor of the new building to the first floor of the existing building. There's a grade difference, so that enters into that, if you will, a corridor between the 2. If you look at the floor plan, you'll see what I'm talking
And
about.
then also what is to the left of the 271 sign?
Those
what-
are also
what-
windows.
We would be looking at as we walk by the building there.
There's windows there, and they front onto some common areas on the first floor. If you go to the floor plan, which is two slides down, I think.
Mhm. Okay,
Here it is. There's some common areas in there, and the central area is actually the central corridor where there's some grade difference made up between, there's
Okay.
a set of stairs that's halfway down the building that makes up some grade difference between the two. But I think the goal was have that an open view of the common areas of the new addition.
I mean, this is just a thought. I don't, now that you've clarified what it is, and it's not a blank wall, but a thought might be just to consider the scale of the fenestration and maybe see if you can relate it better to the existing North Lake Avenue side of the original buildings.
271, yeah. Well, we can certainly pass that back to the architect, and we can certainly talk it off internally and see what we can do to maybe modify that fenestration and all the windows that we show on the North Lake Avenue side.
I mean, don't get me wrong, in my opinion, it's not bad to have the public, see that there's activity in the building, particularly the common areas. But, it just might be an issue of scale. The board have any other questions?
I'm trying to understand the parking requirement. What will the parking requirement be for this?
Well, first of all, although there are 72 beds in here, there is a parking requirement for living, for this sort of living use. But again, none of those people using the units will be driving. They won't have cars there. So there's no parking requirement for them. It's strictly for employees. And like I said, the current 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. has 19 employees there. And with the new 3 shifts, will be 30 employees there. So employees have basically made use of on-street parking for a significant amount of their parking. So there's only those 7 parking spots in the parking lot at the rear of the building now.
And I think, Roman, in the presentation, Mr. Hirschberg did mention encouraging the use of the CDTA by offering passes. And I imagine there's probably also, because it's on 2 major bus corridors, the Midtown Belt corridor and the Central Avenue corridor, that there is a bonus for that.
There's a significant amount we can claim a bonus from the computed amount. And I think on one of the the second sheet of the proposal, I think I have the parking requirement and how many, and we're not providing any parking. But it's very inconvenient for us to provide any parking because we have to have the building occupy the entire building. So that's why we went around, we counted on-street parking within 500 feet of the site. And there's plenty of on-street parking, and 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. is the peak hours for people going to work. But a lot of the parking spots in this particular area are taken up by residents of housing around the site.
Okay, I guess I was just trying to understand, because this is office construction, does that make a difference with the parking requirement? I mean, what is I don't know if Brad could opine on this.
It'd be evaluated as group living other. That's the use. Those types of uses do sometimes have office and other ancillary capacities. I mean, I guess the degree to which the office may be its own use, we could look at that, but our understanding was the office is, to supplement the other uses on the premises.
Okay, and as such, then no on-site parking is required?
I believe there is parking that's required. They have submitted for a transportation demand management program for consideration by the chief planning official. So that's something we'll take a look at. There would be certain, again, reductions that would be built in, but there's still likely would be some base parking requirement that would apply.
Okay. Thank you.
Dan, I guess the question I have, and maybe this relates to the state government requirements, but you mentioned that the number of beds are going to be the same. They just need to conform to new requirements. So you'll have the same population there, but yet you're increasing the staff from 19 to 30. So is that additional 11 staff members, is it also because of state requirements? And that's why it's increasing?
Yeah, the requirements of the state program requires more, a higher employee count per resident, and it also requires a significant amount of what I would say other duties to take place. If Do Young wants to log on here, he can explain it better than me, but I understand that that's the number of employees necessary to meet the New York State Office of Addiction Services and Support's latest requirements. They have guidelines for stabilization and rehabilitation services, which this is under, that require that many more employees. And even if you take a look at the overnight shifts, there's only one more employee, 12 a.m. to 8 a.m., but 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. There's an increase in the number of employees, a small increase in the number of employees, but that changes the ratio of employees to resident.
Okay. I guess the other question I would have in relation to parking, and maybe this is something that the director can answer if you can't, and that is that when the employees increase, would since a lot of them drive to work, would they be connecting with folks they know in the profession that might live by? Would they carpool? So maybe the 30 new people will end up, the 11 additional cars that may come in might be reduced to say 5 or 6, because some people are doubling up as they're coming into work.
That's feasible, especially with the price of gas. People might be looking to do that more. I hope the price of gas goes down, but right now, people are looking to carpool right now that never used to carpool before. And I think essentially, the key element here is CDTA's Universal Access Program. You're right, Mr. Chairman. This is on 2 very popular runs that come very often, 10 or 15 minute intervals during the daytime. People can get to it maybe with one transfer from a whole lot of portions of the city can get here quite easily. So I think that'd be the saving grace with regard to the number of parking requirements, but we won't know until we did actually, it's the kind of thing you do after the fact when you see how many people actually use it. It's very hard to predict in the beginning, but CDTA thought with our volume of employees that it would justify our participation in the Universal Access Program.
Brad, it would be, I think, helpful if you could add in the Dropbox. Maybe it's already there and I didn't get a chance to see it, or the other board members, but the transportation demand management plan.
Good thing.
I think especially I would be interested, Martin, in if you review that, your comments also about it.
Sure. Take a look.
I also wanted to bring to your attention that Mr. Young has his hand up if to make a comment.
Okay, please do.
Thank you, members of the board. So as far as the question regarding transportation, I do have quite a few staff members who actually walk. They live around the Washington Park area and also behind us on Clinton Avenue. So I do have quite a few staff members that they drive, but they would rather prefer to walk, especially when it snows. And they would be, interested in taking, CDTA. We've never really had an issue with parking. Our current on-site only has like 7 spaces, so everybody just seems to, who drives seems to find parking throughout the day here. As far as the increase in staff, the regulatory changes at the state has basically mandated that a lot of our clinical services that we normally used to get outside of hospitality house, so we would, refer our clients to primary care, for example, across town or at Albany Med, they want us to kind of do it all in-house. So the addition of staff is really just a few nurses, LPNs, a medical director. So that's the increase in the staffing.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there any comments by the public on this? Did anybody sign up?
We did not have sign up, but I have 2 members that do want to speak to speak. One is Mr. Felix and the second is Councilmember Ballerine.
Okay. So anytime they're ready.
So
Mr. Felix, you have 3 minutes. Your time starts now. Thank you.
Okay. So my name's Felix Lamonaco. I'm with the architecture firm that helped Dan and Young actually complete this presentation. And I wanted to mention one thing about the office space that is also along the OASIS guidelines that were referenced to. Many of, in the existing building, many of those rooms on the floors as you go up on the second and third floors, those are actually group room spaces too. So those take large volumes that are not really office related, but they're basically places where 12 of the residents meet together with one counselor and actually conduct activities during the day too. So it's not just straight counseling offices. And it also in the building, the reason that the glass and the lounge spaces are a little bit larger than the existing building is that really we wanted to make sure that we could distinguish ourselves from the original building, which was built in 1895. And, also what we wanted to do, and the reason the entrance came to North Lake was because we need to make the building accessible, and it's a half story up. So it's very difficult. And we can do that through plan with basically a new elevator and a lift to make all the floors adjoined. But the entrance to make that accessible really needed to be at the street level.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Ballerin, you have 6 minutes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll be. I won't take.
Please start the clock so that Councilman Ballerin knows how long he has.
Yes, it is started now.
Okay.
Thank you.
I won't take all 6 minutes, but thank you. And thank you for allowing me to speak. I know I didn't sign up on this issue, so thank you for that. The only comment I wanted to make on this is that I really hope the board and the planning department really looks at the USDO and the parking requirements and really do what they can to be consistent in how we implement the USDO and the parking requirements. I know it may not seem like parking is an issue, but if you talk to the residents that I talked to on Bradford Street, I'm sorry, I've got my son and my dog. Wanted to have their voices heard on this too. My point is, if you talk to residents on Bradford Street, you will hear that a lot of concerns about parking, not just from state employees, but also from employers in the area. We've actually I've worked very hard to expand residential parking, and that's something that's going to be done in the next few. It's already been passed by the state. Now we at the city level have to redraw our maps, but parking is an issue, and I just don't want that to be lost in the conversation. And if anybody wants, I'm always open to have walks with anyone to talk to residents who live in the area about how we can try to address those concerns. We've done that with other entities that come into the neighborhood to ease concerns and to address them. And one of the ways that we addressed it was that we worked with the parking authority and had that entity actually rent out parking spots from the parking authority to be able to find parking for their staff. So that there are some creative alternatives out there, to try to address this issue while we bring in new and exciting entities to the neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay. So the recommended action right now is none at this point. It has to be referred to the county planning board for review, and we'll be back. We'll see this again.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We'll move to the next item on the agenda. And we're still in the public hearing. This is 237 Western Avenue, Lofts at Pine Hills. Again, the representing agents is Harshberg and Hirschberg. Also, I did see that the architect, Scott Townsend, is also in the meeting. And in the mixed-use, form-based Midtown District, the request is to construct 2 mixed-use buildings with 52 dwelling units and a 3,800 square foot retail space area, and an additional 42,000 square foot building with 31 dwelling units and about 2,300 square feet of retail area. So the total number of units would be 83, and 9 structures will be demolished. Now, this is a project that we've seen a number of times. We've approved it, and we did see it, I believe, at our last meeting or the meeting before this, because there were some very slight changes, which we reviewed, but we didn't finish approval because it needed to have a few more items looked at, and for the different agencies within the city of Albany to review some items as well. So, Dan, you have 6 minutes to go over the project before we move on to comments and questions.
Mr. Chairman, you folks have seen this both in its original iteration and the revised iteration. The main changes have been the number of units has been reduced. The square footage of commercial space has been somewhat reduced too. But if you want, and 1 floor was taken off the building. We used to have a 5-story building. The tallest building is now 4 stories. If you want to go to the next site plan, it talks about required statistics, and we used to have sub-building parking. It turned out that didn't work out. The main reason that we had to come back with a new iteration was that foundation conditions were much worse than had been indicated by some earlier geotechnical work, so that we had to revise our foundation plan, which meant essentially eliminating the 5-story building and cutting back the expanse of the building facing on Quail Street. So there are 2 separate buildings, one at Western Avenue and one at Quail Street, both accessed independently. Both will be serviced by utilities independently, water and sewer, and the parking spaces are 69, including some on-street parking. We've adjusted our count of parking. We have also adjusted our tree planting since the last meeting. We had to go out and measure the existing trees on Quail Street, and when we did that, we found 1 tree is actually in very poor condition, have to be replaced. So we added like 3 street trees to the site to meet the code. Next. And this is the landscape plan. We've added some trees, we've added some shrubs where required. We put some planting at the back of the State Street properties. And I think we beefed up the landscaping significantly since the earlier version. Next. This is the stormwater facility. The units will have blue roofs, and they will be connected to a subsurface storage system, which is connected into the sewer that actually traverses the site. The black line at the end of that sewer is an existing sewer which traverses the line and goes underneath the building next door to 237. The demolition plan, all the places with X get demolished. There's nine buildings and some asphalt areas and other items at the rear. All 9 to be demolished. We made up a debris diversion plan. We have made application for the 9 demolition permits also. Next. The renderings are, they're slightly different than the original ones, but the main change is the extent of the building behind it and the fact that the 5th story is gone. From the facade purposes, the buildings look very, very similar to the original facades that you previously approved. And this is looking over it from Western Avenue. If we look over it from State Street, east of the project, what you're seeing there is the Quail Street facade of the building. And it looks very similar to the one that you previously approved. We've added a couple of other details to it, but basically the building looks, like I say, very similar. Next. And this is an aerial view from State Street, sort of behind the building, and that shows the rear of the building and the parking lot behind it. We think that this project fits very well, and it does a lot of things that we can do by providing additional housing. And we've identified the required number of units of affordable housing. Next, I think I have. This is from the street view from Western Avenue. And you can see how the building blends in. And this is a view down of Quail Street facade from that same location. The building, you can identify with the gray portion at the top. It blends in very well, in my opinion, with what you're looking at there from the old facades. And I think I have, these are the floor plans. This is the Western Avenue building, commercial space on the front portion, common rooms and units above that on both the basement and the first floor. And the basement, it's called the basement, even though with the drop in grade from Western Avenue to the rear, it's a full story exposed at the rear. Next. This is the proposed basement floor at the Quail Street. And again, you can see that there's entrances to the rear that are actually at grade at the rear of that building, again, because there's a drop from Quail Street to the rear of these buildings. The center area is quite a bit lower than the frontage. And this is the first floor with our commercial areas up front and units behind it. And this is second floor, and there should be a third floor. I don't know whether I showed. No, I did not. Okay, I am done with my 6 minutes presentation.
Okay. Entertain questions to Dan. I'll remind the board again that we've seen this project even in its new iteration a couple of times. Pretty much he just reviewed what he had mentioned before and why the structures had to change because of the problems with the soil and the weight of the building. Is there any questions by the board? Okay, hearing none. Jocelyn, other people want to speak?
Yes, this is a list of the people that have registered to speak. I can start off by with Councilmember Ballerin.
Okay,
Am I good to go?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
I thought maybe that scream was you saying, "Oh my God, not again."
No, well, I am glad to see this project finally come to the final stages. You know, my concerns about this project have have always been about the parking and the affordability. I'm still a little concerned about the parking, but I think with the reduction in units, that eases a little bit of my concern. Plus, I do know that there are some space across the street that if the developer sees a need for, hopefully he'll look to acquire to give himself and his residents more flexibility. The housing affordability, I think the developer is following the law as it's currently written. I think that's something that we need to address at our end at the Common Council level. And I am appreciative of the fact that at the previous meeting, it was shared that the developer is scattering the affordable units throughout the buildings and throughout the size of units thoroughly, which is, I think, what the heart of the law is looking to do. And that's what we want to see, and I'm glad that that's what they're doing. They're not just putting them all in one sector of the building. They're really doing what the policy is to do, is to scatter the units within the building equally and fairly. So I'm very appreciative of that, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that they've taken that approach in how they address that issue and how they treat all their residents. So that's a good move on their part, and I think it's good for the neighborhood. I think there was some excitement about this project. I think it will bring some new energy to a block that has seen this investment throughout the years. Hopefully, it will also bring some new energy to the surrounding blocks. I know Weston Avenue and Washington Avenue could use some love as well. So hopefully this project will help spark some of that excitement in that area. I'm a big proponent of what's happening with the SUNY engineering school going on Washington and South Lake, and the new developments and the new opportunities there for that area to really get some reinvestment that it really needs. So I look forward to seeing this get approved today, hopefully, and working with the developers, the owners, and then the property management in the future on any issues that might arise. And hopefully there will be positive issues that arise. It doesn't always have to be negative. It can't. There are positive things that happen as well. And I also want to thank developers for continually moving forward, even with the setbacks that they saw. Because it is important for us to invest in all of our neighborhoods, and I think this is one neighborhood that really could use some love. So I'm glad to see that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Ms. Brown, you have 3 minutes.
So I cannot identify Miss Brown with the names that I have in front of me. I do, however, have a phone number only. So if you allow me, I will give this person in case this is Helene Brown. Ms. Brown?
Well, maybe we can go on to Mr. Furlong, and then maybe she can do whatever she needs to do to get on. Oh, I think she just got on. Ms. Brown, are you there? Okay, let's move on to Mr. Furlong and then get back to Ms. Brown.
Sounds good.
Mr. Furlong.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Furlong, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. I own Last Vestige Music Shop at 173 Quail Street for 32 years. I've been there. Albany resident all my life. I am very much for this project. I went to the meetings when they were with everybody together over on Henry Johnson Boulevard. I was very excited to see this happening. I think the neighborhood will be the better for it. I've watched the neighborhood go from a great college neighborhood back in the early 90s to kind of a desolate situation in the this century. For a while, there was a lot of drug dealers and bad situations going on with the absentee landlords. Now it's kind of quiet again because a lot of the buildings are vacant or burned down. And I'm very excited for this. I think it would be a spectacular addition. Mr. Rafferty, I've met him a number of times to talk about it. I really think he wants to do the right thing here. And he's been really stymied by COVID, other situations that have slowed everything down. Behind my building right now, they had started, all the trees are knocked down, their preparation. The buildings that have been vacant alongside of me from 177 down that he owns has been broken into, people living there illegally. He even spoke to me a couple months ago. Some clever people actually stole a power box from someplace and hooked up electricity to the building that had already been disconnected by National Grid. And he had to have that taken care of. So we've got a lot of issues with, bad people getting into the building. I had to have the building next to me. A separate issue, 175 Quail has been in arrears. The owner has totally neglected. He's not part of Mr. Rafferty's buildings. We've been trying to get that building. Mr. Rafferty would like to purchase that and add to it because it would add more parking. And but the guy who owns it has been a total uncooperative. He owes the county, the city, tons of money for years, hasn't paid taxes or fines. And for some reason, the county still hasn't taken the building from him. And Mr. Rafferty is eager to buy that. Separate issue. But if he does get this thing approved, between my building and his beautiful new building will be this eyesore of a vacant ex-building sitting there, which is awful. So I'm hoping as a separate issue, somebody finally does something about 175 Quail Street. But moving on to this project.
Sir,
please,
you're at time.
Okay, please approve it.
Thank you. Jesleen, it would be good if you could let them know they have 30 seconds to warning.
Will do.
Okay, John Clarkson from the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Clarkson, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, John Clarkson. I live on South Lake Avenue. I'm also president of the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association. And we vigorously support this project. We have for a number of time, for a long time. It's been around 3 years now. Very exciting project. People are asking questions about it at our meetings. It's coming up organically. So as Mr. Furlong said, there's a lot of excitement. And there should be. Quail Street, the Western Avenue and State Street have kind of hollowed out a little bit. I go back even further than Mr. Furlong. I lived actually at 692 and 694 State Street in the late 70s to the early 80s. And all the apartments were filled at that time. All the stores were filled, and there were a lot more people in the neighborhood. So like the city itself, Albany very much needs development. We need it particularly in Midtown. And we are very supportive of mixed use projects in this area. From a sustainability standpoint, it's also wonderful. You know, you can get to 3 or 4 bus lines so easily from that location. It has always been in the center of a hub, and you can also get to shopping and places to eat and all of those on foot. So we think it is a location that will do very, very, very well. So we've already written several letters to you approving of it. We just took a vote recently with new changes and approved it again. So it has our support. There is, however, one issue which I need to mention, which I hope that either Mr. Hirschberg or Mr. Townsend can address. And that is a concern that we've had even with the initial design, that normally you expect to see entrances to apartment buildings, including in mixed use structures, from the street. At least in the city, there's a suburban design where the entrance is always from the parking lot. And we're not exactly sure, so perhaps could be explained. We believe there is an entrance from the sidewalk to the B building on Quail Street, but if that could be explained. Otherwise, it looks like there are sidewalks or pathways from the sidewalk leading down to doors that are essentially along the vehicular entrances, both on Quail and on Western. So if you could clarify, that would be helpful. But the point for the developer and for the planning board is that
Pardon me, sir, you have 30 seconds.
The point to remember going forward is that it's great to have access to the street. If you really want walkability, it shouldn't necessarily be through or in near proximity to a parking lot. The building should front on the street as well as provide access directly to the street, because a lot of people living there are probably not going to be driving either ever or regularly, and we want to support that. So thank you very much. We do support, and please go forward this project with modifications should they occur. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to the staff recommendations and then go back to answer any of the issues that were raised.
So Al, we're generally supportive of the project. We had a couple comments in our memo, and we would, echo. I think Mr. Townsend is going to speak to it if he has an opportunity. Mr. Clarkson's comments regarding the importance of front entrances. However, this has been referred to the county planning board. Unfortunately, the county planning board does not meet until this Thursday. We do expect to see this back hopefully in early April. So our recommendation based on the county planning board referral would be to defer until the next meeting. However, we are supportive of the project.
Okay. I do want to mention also that there was a letter that we received from another member of the community. And I'd like to get a clarification on this, that once the developers have an opportunity to comment, especially Mr. Townsend. And that is that there was mentioned that 35% of the demolished structures would be reused. And as you know, Historic Albany Foundation is more than happy to come in and take out what might be even more valuable material from these houses, given the years that they were originally built. Now, I know that one of the structures are garages, so maybe the 35% is skewed because there were these wrecked old decrepit garages on the back of the site. But I think that's something that we should head.
Wait a
minute.
I did the diversion plan.
Hang on first, because I want to make sure that the board doesn't have any other questions. Okay, if not, we'll ask to have those comments addressed. Scott, if you want to address them. The entrance.
If you don't mind, Dan.
Yeah, I prepared the diversion plan for all 9 buildings. And on each one, we took a look at it. There are items that Historic Albany would be interested in, and will certainly make it available to them depending upon ingress and egress being safely provided. Again, some of these buildings, you can't go in there and start taking things down without bringing the whole building down around you. So the first item on our debris diversion list is normally make items available. And the second item is there is significant metal in the buildings, which is recyclable. There's significant other items that can be recycled. And the final analysis, we do have to excavate these buildings down, including foundation walls and slabs, even though they're primarily frame construction, although some do have brick. There's enough concrete material in there to satisfy our need to. We have the demolition contractor, we move it to his yard where he crushes it and use it as recycled material for primarily for pavement subgrade material. It makes a good pavement subgrade material. So all those items are in our debris diversion plan, and I'm pretty certain that we can find demolition contractors that can follow that.
Right. I would just remind you, Dan, that the volunteers at the Historic Albany Foundation are very, very good at getting into old buildings and knowing what's there and what's not. So you can invite them in. They know a lot about them, and they also know how to move in buildings that are falling apart.
And we've worked with them on virtually every other building that we had to demolish in the city since we've been involved with it.
Okay. Scott, do you want to talk about the entrance?
Sure. I'm just going to add one thing about the Historic Albany Foundation. The executive director, Pam Howard, spoke to me a while ago, and we're definitely open to working with them. Mr. Rafferty, the owner, he's totally open. Once we get through approvals, we'll start dialogue and coordinating that. So I just wanted to emphasize that we're all working in good faith towards that anyway. So
thanks.
I do want to address Mr. Clarkson's comment. It's a very valid comment. I do agree. I did get a call from one of the neighborhood association members last night. Unfortunately, I didn't have the drawings in front of me, so I misspoke. So I do want to clarify one thing on the building that does face Quail Street. And if you went back to, I think it's the second floor plan on the Quail Street, there actually is an entrance that goes out to the front in between the retail buildings. So or the retail spaces, I should say. So, we're the next plan, I believe. That's the basement plan. So you want to go up to the first floor, yeah. You can see that little piece that actually goes out. And as Dan Hirschberg was saying, is that it's a full walkout basement scenario here. So this is the first floor at the Quail Street side. We do have an entrance that goes into the units. So we have both an access from the parking lot and an access from Quail Street. I did misspeak to Mr. Cheshire when I spoke to him last night. We do not have the same scenario on on Western Avenue. That facade is much narrower. It's much skinnier just because of the way the site is set up. So we really didn't have an opportunity to do that. We do have sidewalks going down, and we will make sure that we have proper lighting and everything going down there. So I do appreciate the comments. I do want to say that at least we do have it on Quail Street.
Okay. All right, thank you. So Brad, regarding this, since we have to wait, unfortunately, for the county planning board to review it, we'll just have to wait and give final approval, as long as there's no changes, next month or whenever the April meeting is.
April 5th would be the next meeting, so we do expect it to be on there.
All right, thanks. All right, and that ends the public hearing. And we now move on to our public meeting agenda. And the first item on the public meeting agenda is 15 Champlain Street. The applicant is Bonaquisti Holdings, and it's represented by Orico Associates. And this is in an industrial number 1 which is General Industrial Zoning District, and it's for the construction of a 9,000 square foot structure for storage and wholesale distribution or similarly permitted use. Basically, which means it's a spec building. And there are a number of requests here for waivers, which you will see and will be explained. And this is a new project, so there has been no prior appearance. To orient yourself, Champlain Street is a north-south street that runs in the North Albany area. It's the first street east of Broadway. Okay, the applicant has 10 minutes to present.
Good evening, Dominic Rico representing Paul Bonaquisti. He was online a little while ago, but he had a little family emergency and he had to get offline, so he apologizes for not being in attendance tonight, but I'll do my best to answer any questions that might have come directly from him. And it's the first time I'm presenting like this to the city, so I've been watching your formats all night, so I think I got down how you guys go forward doing these things. So I'll explain the project. It's referred to as 15 Champlain Street. That's relative. Brad had us generate a new property address because we are creating a subdivision of the property. Some quick history on the property. If you look on the zoning map, as you can see, it's one block, but it used to be on South Street, used to be all single family lots. Mr. Bonaquisti bought those. I don't remember how many years back, and he actually consolidated it into one parcel, which is called 20 Center Street at this point. What we're looking to do is, as you're looking at that photo, the south, the north being up, the southeast corner of that photo is to establish a lot, a new lot referring to as 15 Champlain Street, and constructing a 9,000 square foot warehouse with a small office area within the warehouse, loading docks coming off of Champlain Street, which would be similar when you look at the site plan. The existing building, the loading docks the front of the building on Champlain will match. That's the existing site plan. Our loading docks will match the face of the existing building he has now, which he also uses loading docks for. So the majority of the building is set back off Champlain Street, but it does front South Street, and it does sit right directly on the property line. If you show the next, actually in this plan here, you can see that pretty much the entire site is paved. There's very little green space on the property at all. We plan on, that's one of our waivers, but we plan on trying to bring some green space back to the area. The next drawing is the proposed map, I believe. So the highlighted area that you see in the bottom right of the site plan is the proposed structure, 9,000 square foot warehouse. We have accessible area to the rear. This whole property will again be fenced in, so it will be completely separate from the 20 Center Street. But they will have, Mr. Bonaquisti plans on owning the property and the building, but releasing it out to another user for warehousing. The rear part of the property of 15 Champlain will maintain as 20, and that's to continue to be used for Bonaquisti companies, equipment and things like that, what they use it for now. You can see the truck, the loading dock of the truck. Again, the face of the building is the same as the existing face. We've added as much parking as we could on the property in the front yard. That's another waiver we're asking for. Provided some landscape screening. We have some street side screening. We are going to need water and sewer connections, which are probably along South Street. There's existing connections to the property now. As I said, there was multiple buildings there, so there's multiple connection points for the water and sewer that are already existing. We've tried to provide as much information to meet the standards and the codes. We've had this in front of the city for many months now. And before we've gotten to this point, we've gone through numerous iterations with the planning department. They've been helpful in guiding us to try to meet all the codes and standards that we can meet, and the ones that we really can't, no matter what we did on the property. We try to come to some kind of try to do as much as we could, though, even though we still may need a waiver for it. The next plan I have is really just a demolition plan and showing what we're removing. New foundation. We are replacing all of the sidewalks throughout the property on Champlain Street. We're not replacing that with concrete. We're replacing it with asphalt apron, because it would be more beneficial for the trucks backing in and out off of that instead of the concrete. But everything else along South Street and the corner up to about the parking spot, so about 18 feet off of the corner will be all new concrete walkways and curbs where we need to put curbs. I think that's pretty much it as the projects. I mean, we're in front of you this evening to request our waivers so we can continue forward. Oh, we had building elevations. Yeah, the building elevation, like I said, it's a metal frame building. Loading docks in the front off of Champlain Street. The A6 elevation is the South Street elevation. The B6 is the view if you were standing on 20 Center Street parking area looking in, and the D14 is the rear looking into the other part of the 20 Center Street. The next floor plan shows the potential for an office, which is, again, it's 1,500 square feet of the 9,000 square foot building. That's all we're proposing at this time. A new tenant may ask for a little bit more or a little bit less. We anticipate the buildings, we anticipate a 6-month construction, but with getting metal frame buildings this time of year, or in the past couple of years now, are getting harder to get with timing. But once the building was delivered, it should be about 6 months construction. And I know we answered these questions that were here. We have no meetings with the neighborhood. Mr. Bonaquisty's been running his business out of that neighborhood for a lot of years now. He plans on staying there and just would like to build another building to add to his getting new users and help with the warehousing situations down there. It's a light industrial area. I know we abut a residential, but it's the last area in the light industrial zone. So I guess you want me to read through these waivers, or how do we want to do this? Because I'll just ask you right now how you want to.
Oh, the planning staff could bring us through those. Thank you.
Okay.
Questions from the
Okay,
board?
so
Let's hear. It looks like you're asking for a waiver for street trees, but you are going to include trees on South Street, right? Did I see that on the plan?
Yes, I believe I meet the requirements on South Street. It's on Champlain Street that we won't meet that requirement.
Okay, I was thinking because that faces the houses, so it's important to have a little buffer there. Okay, thank you. The first one is was the street amenities that we talked about. I mean, there's really no place to put any amenities in this area. There are no amenities in the area. All the trash receptacles and everything will be on site within the buildings. So there really isn't any, just a response. So we're looking not to put any bike racks and benches and stuff like that within that. And again, these would all be on South Street, on Champlain Street, because of the wide opening for the truck delivery. There's really no place to put it there either.
Okay. On the west side of the building, after the building ends, there's a large vacant area. There's currently a gravel area, then an asphalt area, then a gravel area as you move west towards the first house on South Street. I guess it's a storage area now for some of Bonaquisti's trucks. Do you plan, I was wondering about the gravel areas. Does he plan to do anything with those gravel areas? Like do all asphalt or some other surface that would keep dust and things down?
There's no plan on it, but I'm sure he'd be very acceptable to putting a different kind of surface down there if dust was an issue. I know he maintains it now. He does have it raked out. He does put new stone down here and there because it does, you do get some fines, but I don't think he'd be objectionable to paving, but it does have a lot of some heavy equipment sometimes just sits there. And with pavement, a lot of times those things will sink and crack the pavement, especially in asphalt pavement, where the stone actually will adhere to the weight a lot better. But I would think it's definitely open to discussion to do something there.
Okay. Also, when I was there looking at it, I noticed that the existing chain link fence is rather decrepit. Is there a plan to build a new fence, put a new fence in?
On the road frontage, along the new building, the fence would be removed almost the entire length of the property along or where the building is on South Street. And then new fencing would be put in up along Champlain because we got to put another gate in there. The remaining part of the fencing, there was no plans to replace that, but there will be a new fence going around the building on the interior lot line, basically. But there was no plans to replace any of the other fencing.
Okay. Other questions from the board? Jasleen, has there been any body signed up to speak from the public?
No, there has not been, and I do not see any hands raised either.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the planning staff's comments and recommendations.
Okay, so there are 8 waivers we're considering. Justine, if you wouldn't mind going back to the slides. I'd just like to go through each of the waivers quickly so that the board understands on each of them. Go back to the first one, maybe. Okay, so the first requirement, and this is something that you may see as a waiver on other cases going forward as well. So there's a requirement in our code that a piece of street furniture, a bench, bicycle rack, planter, trash receptacle, piece of public art be installed every 50 feet of frontage. I think there's an obvious question of being that these are in the right of way, the expectation would be the city to own and maintain these. In some areas that doesn't necessarily make good logical sense. And obviously, I don't know that we could commit to doing that on every city block every 50 feet. So, we are generally supportive of the ask in this case. I do disagree with Dominic a little bit in that I think they could be provided, but I think we need to pose the question to Department of General Services as to whether this is an area that the city is looking for these sort of amenities. I would guess not, but I would ask the board defer on that waiver so that we can get that formally in the record from the Department of General Services. The second request, and there's a handful of these requests that are really related to the way the building is oriented on Champlain Street, because Champlain Street is the principal vehicular street. That's more of an industrial street. It allows the truck access for that street. So in this case, the curb cut where it is located, and because they're accommodating several loading bays along that frontage is quite wide and does come in with within a 60-foot proximity from the intersection. You know, I know that they've looked at shortening that up, but I think the way the loading is configured, that's not going to be feasible. So we would recommend approval of that waiver. Next slide. Right-of-way access width. This is very similar to the prior. Again, the curb cut width exceeds the standard 20 feet here. It is due to the way the loading docks are configured along Champlain Street. Putting the building at the corner and the loading docks behind as maybe more pleasing to the eye would put more of that commercial truck traffic onto South Street, which is more residential in nature. And going through the existing access drive at the property between the new and the old building would be too tight to make the turning radius for the trucks. So in this case, and I don't know if that's the proper reference, but in any case, a right-of-way access width is limited to 20 feet. And in this case, the curb cut will be wider than that. Also, the parking location, you know, general good design principle speaks to parking being located to the side or behind the principal structure. In this case, it is on a corner with 2 front yards. And again, because Champlain Street is the main industrial roadway, that is where the access will be for the trucks. And therefore, the parking is most logically configured in front of the building along Champlain. Next slide. Again, the loading space location also should not be located within the front yard. You know, I think I've spoken to that on the prior two, very similar and overlapping here. So we are recommending approval of that and the 2 prior waivers. With respect to street trees, there is a requirement that a street tree be planted along the frontage per 35 linear feet of frontage. In this case, they have the 2 frontages in South and Champlain. They have planted trees per 35 feet where they can. I believe they have 7 of the 9 trees that would be required. The other 2 trees would be located in the area where the curb cut driveway is for the truck access. Similar to the street amenities, we would like to confirm with the forester that there isn't an off-site location for those additional 2 trees, or that there, you know, isn't another option that they can identify that they do support this waiver. So we would ask the board to defer on the waiver for the street trees. And I would also note the street trees would have to be placed. There are power lines running along South Street in particular, so they would have to be the type of trees that would you know, grow much shorter, so they wouldn't interfere with the power lines. I know that we've kicked around several design ideas with the applicant. I did have a conversation earlier with Chairman DeSalvo where we talked about maybe looking at an option where if that building, you know, could be set back 5 feet, maybe plantings along there would be appropriate. I will explore that with Dominic as we move forward. I think it may be a little tight with the rear setback to do that. And the next slide.
You got it.
Next slide.
Do you not see it, Brad?
No, I'm still on loading space location and street trees. There we go. So frontage landscaping requirement would be where a building is located, set back from the street, which it is from Champlain Street. In this case, you know, the code does speak to having the first 20 feet along the street frontage in those cases be landscaped. Again, not entirely practically here, given the circumstances. It is a more industrial street. I think while there's probably some scenario where they could meet this requirement, I think in this case, it's appropriate to waive it. So we would, you know, recommend approval of that in this instance. And the one waiver that's being requested that the staff is not in agreement with would be the fence height. I believe there's an existing fence there that they would like to reutilize that is 8 feet in height. The maximum allowable is 6 feet in height. So in this case, and Dominic, I don't remember if we may have discussed taking that one off the table. I don't know specifically, but again, we would support. We think we haven't seen justification to support in excess of 6 feet in this instance.
Okay.
And I believe that's the 8. So
Right.
six recommended approvals, 2 recommended deferrals, and 1 recommended denial for the staff.
That equals 9. I think you want 5 approvals. 2
5,
defers.
2, and 1. Sorry.
Yeah. And questions from the board, comments from the board?
I just got one question, Brad. The number of waivers requested going forward, if every applicant does the same thing, is that a concern, or is it really just a matter that these are general requirements that for several zoning districts and maybe not as applicable in the industrial districts?
I think the Common Council has sort of given us direction to be more transparent about these things. I think as we go forward and we identify recurring circumstances, I think the street amenities and the street trees are good ones that we could probably find a code amendment solution to. So again, they will be popping up in some cases on your agenda for the foreseeable future, but we do look to, improve and give ourselves more options out of that as we go forward. I think that was some of our concern when they originally put that provision in, is that there are just some things, just generally the way they're written is to give the planning board that flexibility. So I think we're seeing a little bit the consequence of that, but I think, the solution is to identify what those common ones are and seek a solution.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Further questions or comments?
No.
Brad, I have a procedural question. Would it be possible on the defer ones to approve them with the condition that the issues that are raised by the first waiver concerning street amenities, which seems to be pretty simple, and the street tree one, could we approve on the condition that those get resolved between the forestry agency and the planning department?
I mean, you could, I think the project will be coming back for full endorsement. That would provide the board another opportunity to consider those, but unless council sees otherwise, the board could approve them with the appropriate conditions.
Counselor, do you have an opinion about this?
Just thank you. To make sure I understand the question, is it so to see if you can approve something like ahead of time?
Well, there, based on the relatively simple matter, like finding how a place to put 2 other trees that are recommended, in another location, maybe in a park or something, they don't seem to be particularly serious. So my question was, can we approve them with the condition that the 2 issues get resolved? The one about the waiver on all of the street tree, not the street trees, the physical amenities like park benches and bicycle racks, and the other one on street trees.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let me, can I have a couple of minutes?
Yeah, I would mention though that in the past we have approved projects on conditions that were much bigger than these.
Yeah, for a conditional waiver. Yeah, hold on, if I just, let me, before I say too much, yeah, if I could have a couple of minutes, I'll just make sure.
But Brad, if I'm understanding procedure correctly, you're saying that if the recommendation is not to approve the fence height waiver, that means that the plan as it currently is will have to be revised and they'll have to come back to the board for approval. Is that correct?
So the board, the plan will be coming for development plan review approval to this board. Anyways, I think the idea in getting the waivers on ahead would be allow them to continue with the final design plan. So when it comes back to the board, these issues have been identified. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think, you know, when they come back for the development plan approval, if there are outstanding waivers, the board could act on them at that time.
Okay.
Well, if we have to, that makes my question kind of moot, because if we have to still approve for development plan,
then we're coming back to it.
We got to come back anyway. Well, we'll wait for council's recommendation anyway. No, I thought this was the final, that we could, you know, move forward with this right now. I didn't realize there was nothing. I'm just looking here. I didn't see development plan approval on here. Just the waivers.
Yeah, the development plan approval is not ready for approval. That needs to go out to departments and it needs to be, you know, recommended on the county planning board. So we didn't put that on the agenda for consideration.
No.
That's, so the other project has not been reviewed at all by county planning board at this time?
No, it was referred this month.
Yeah, it sort of makes the issue moot because they'll have to come back anyway for development plan approval.
Yeah, I would say then I would hold off on.
Right.
Although Brad's not going to like this.
Well, I really think we do need to have, and what we can follow up, and I really do think we have the question of whether waivers need to be endorsed by the county planning board before they come before this board, because really in some cases people can't finalize their design plans until they have an answer on the waivers. So it just, you know, it makes it really difficult to get a project on an agenda where the board can act on it. So
I have to ask, why does this have to go to the county planning board? I mean, Broadway is it, how many feet?
It's within 500 feet of Broadway, I would say would be the principal reason, yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought Broadway was farther away from that.
That is a city road fully maintained by the city. It is a designated state route. So the county has indicated that they, you know, that needs to be referred, which pretty much takes in most of the city of Albany.
Okay.
The county has gotten very much more vocal about their recommendations as well, in terms of, you know, again, that's a conversation we need to have with the county.
Well, based on that, I mean, should we go ahead anyway and one by one approve or defer these waivers, or because I don't think the county planning board has any jurisdiction over these waivers, does it?
Defer to council on that, and I think we have a difference of opinion, but she's the council, so I'm gonna heed her advice.
Well, no, I mean, just in terms of being consistent with some of the other applications that the board has reviewed, the board did hold off on reviewing waiver requests in the past until the county planning board had weighed in. So looking at the project as a whole, because not having the county planning board review and recommendation of even some of the waiver applications, if that could be construed as a jurisdictional defect, then the whole planning board review of the project would then be like null and void. from that point forward.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, probably my preference is for the board not to act until county planning board has reviewed the project. And then if the board decides to deny all of the waivers, some of the waivers, and the project has to be substantially redesigned, then it would have to go back to the county planning board.
Unless we overrule them by a supermajority. Okay. All right, then we will wait for county planning board on this one and probably see it on April 5th.
Well, so just to be clear, these waivers haven't been referred to the county yet, so they'll have to be referred in May. And then this would come back in June.
Aye.
But the project as a whole has been referred. The project as a whole in its current design. Right?
Okay, so the waivers wouldn't have to be referred?
Well, so the waivers also speak to the project in its current form, right?
Yeah, it sounds like what you're saying,
okay.
Brad, is only that the county planning board has not seen the entire project and all its implications, that what was sent to them was the project without the waivers.
Correct. Well, I mean, the waivers are, if they care to read our code, the waivers are from provisions within the code. So you'd think that would be intuitive, but
well, if that's the point, then we'll wait for the county planning board's recommendations when they come back, and we just got to assume that they have enough smarts to know what's included. So we will wait and review this on April 5th. And we'll move on to the final project.
Thank you.
Okay. 242 Spruce Street. And the applicant is same name, LLC. And in the zoning district, mixed use community urban. This is a proposal to rehabilitate and then add to an existing structure to accommodate 37 dwelling units and about 8,100 square feet of retail. The request is a waiver of development standard for street amenities and a waiver of development standard for upper floor transparency. And this is a project that we have seen before. I know that I think we reviewed it a couple of times on workshops and maybe one public meeting. But we're now moving forward on it. So Patrick Shu is the developer and the applicant. And Mr. Shu, if you are with us, please begin your presentation.
How you guys doing today? Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. How's everybody doing tonight? Yeah, so you're correct. You guys have seen this project. I believe we were on back in November, and we're finally making some headway with this project. We're actually approved with financing through our local lender already. So we're just really trying to get this pushed through with planning right now at this point. So Brad, I'm sorry. Some of this stuff came out a little quirky on the PowerPoint. We did resend you guys another PowerPoint presentation though, with these items kind of put back normally. I don't know if you guys could pull that up at this point or not, but.
Ghislaine, do you have that?
Well, it could be good if we could turn this up from sideways to up top.
Just turn your computer, Al.
Oh, well, that's one way to do it.
So,
Yeah, I mean, Pat,
There
I
we
think
go.
we'd asked, yeah. Do you
Yes.
have PowerPoint? That you
Yeah, so we actually sent it, oh, here it is. There it is. Sorry, we had some, my PM had some problems with the PowerPoint earlier today.
Well, it looks like you have it now. I could see them, the side ones. They
Yeah,
seem
we
to
don't,
be,
you don't have to pick up your computer and adjust it anymore, hopefully.
hey, there we go.
There we go. There we go. We're on the right track now. So obviously, we brought this project to you guys in November. This is the old Freihofer's Bakery. It's located on under Henry Johnson Boulevard between Spruce and Elk Street. So this is just a side view of the project, a shot from the Spruce Street side going directly towards the Elk Street side. Is the corner of the building. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is the current site plan right now. The proposed site plan, actually, I'm sorry. We've got away with having a parking lot where it says vacant lot, open space, snow storage area. Remove the parking lot over there. And we have adjusted the curb cuts on the Elk Street side, as per your request in the previous, from the previous meeting. If we go to the next slide, please. This is the existing elevations as per your last meeting. We have revised this and resubmitted it back to you guys. If we could go to the next screen, please. So this is the new proposed elevation with new window openings. This is going to be as per also historical guidelines also. So we lined up all the windows, new openings, opened up new existing openings, closed other openings to kind of make the whole building look aligned with the existing structures. This is going to go into our next issue, which is one of the waivers that we're going to be requesting for transparency. As you guys could see, just so we don't have to go back in the slide later on, that on the 4th floor addition, where it says the hardy board wood, that is the addition. As you can see, all the windows line up. And we are requesting a waiver for the light transparency, just because that, as you can see, we are trying to line up the windows to match the existing structure historically. And that if we do, add more windows, it's going to pretty much defeat the whole purpose of us getting to this point of trying to adjust windows and making the building historically appropriate for the area. Next slide, please. And this is going to kind of go into our waivers that we're asking. You guys just had the similar waiver requested previous. Again, this is going to be for street amenity. The difference for us is that on one side, we literally only have 5 feet of sidewalk, and it's existing condition. We just don't see it feasible to be putting a bike rack or bench just based off the existing sidewalk. If we could go to the next slide, please. And this goes back to the transparency that we're asking for a waiver for. And like I explained before, we are trying to match up all the windows on a 4th floor. And this transparency really pertains to the new addition that we're adding. And again, we have to hit the minimum of 30% on upper floors. If we go any more, we'd have to add more windows or make the windows bigger, which would alter the look of the building, which was one of your requests, your previous requests. And I think that pretty much hits all the points. Oh, this is the waiver for
okay,
the reason, I guess, which I kind of explained to you guys earlier.
okay. Questions, Mr. Chu? From the board? Okay, hearing none. Jocelyn, is there any who want to speak?
Nobody signed up and no hands now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Brad, can you give the recommendations, please?
This has also been sent to the county planning board, so we're going to defer until they have considered the project.
Okay, what about the, I'm trying to match up what I see here on your report, the facades that are on here with the circled areas about windows, is what Mr. Chu has explained. Yeah, good. Thanks for putting that up. Is he now conforming to the recommendations that you have where you have the circles?
There were in exploring the due diligence for the waiver request, there were a few areas that we had recommended the board ask the applicant if they could accommodate revised configurations. Those were the 3 windows in the top, known as the rear elevation along the right, if those could be made to double windows. And then on the Spruce Street elevation, if above the garage door elevation on the left, all the way up the top, if a window could be added to the middle there. We don't know. We did look at the floor. Oh, excuse me. That second, I retract the second statement. I meant to speak to the Henry Johnson Boulevard elevation. On the Spruce Street elevation, that was there doesn't be, based upon the floor plans, there doesn't appear to be an ability to add a window there. On the Henry Johnson Boulevard at the top left, we were questioning whether they could add an additional window there. We do support the waiver for transparency, but we just wanted to get confirmation of whether or not that was feasible before we fully endorsed it.
Yeah, and I think it is important on the elevation, that's the top one, to make those windows consistent as double windows if possible. Any other questions on this? To Mr. Chu?
No, all set.
Okay. Mr. Chu, do you want to respond to the about the window issue?
So are we saying that we want to add a window on top of the Henry Johnson Boulevard elevation? There's no window along that whole section, though, that follows up. So you would have another window transplanted there to look kind of off, without putting a window on the 3rd floor and 2nd floor also. Again, we added windows to try to match, I guess, the alignment of the whole building, and I think that if we add another window there, it will just be another kind of blank, without adding a 2nd and 3rd floor on that.
Well, the recommendation by the planning staff is to add the windows that look exactly like the others to the immediate left on each floor.
The immediate left. I'm sorry, I may be misunderstanding what you're saying. Which immediate left are you talking about?
On the Henry Johnson Boulevard.
Uh-huh.
Whoever was controlling the arrow, can you move the arrow again to that location? I don't see the arrow. Well, the far right side of the Henry Johnson Boulevard, oh, there, whoops, there was the arrow, okay. Okay, this is, which one is the Henry Johnson Boulevard? Oh, this one. Yeah, there is a suggestion to add a window right where you see the arrow.
Correct.
And then on the top one, which is the rear elevation, each of those 3 windows on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors was matched the windows that are immediately to their left. And the ones to the left you can see are 4 panes.
And then we also have, if you guys look over to the left, a single and then another double and then another single. So it kind of lines up as a pattern going down.
Okay.
So it's a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. If you guys could see that as a pattern also.
Yeah. Okay.
And in regards to the Henry Johnson Boulevard, the 3rd elevation, what is that? Is that just like a block? see-through block, or what is that?
Yeah, it
Whether-
was an infill seafood block, correct.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the chair is maybe recommending something similar on the new top floor to copy that, or I can see it going either way, Al, since there's nothing on the second level. And you can go, window first, nothing second, quasi window third, and nothing on the fourth.
Just want the council to know that we did add additional windows on the first floor, which you guys requested on the commercial level. We think that, and we also added multiple windows on the third floor and opened up windows in various locations throughout the building. That's why we opened as many openings as we possibly could to align with our floor plan. So there was a reason why we did not open that the third and second, essentially the second, third, and fourth floor window opening.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll back Pat up on that. They have made a number of accommodations in working with us, so we do respect that. We just, in the board considering a waiver, just, wanted to make sure we looked at anything that we could do to get closer to whatever the required number was.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that some of the issues might have to do with the alignment of the apartments and where the walls are, or the closets are, things like that prevent necessarily putting a window in.
Correct. We adjusted multiple floor plans in here with, almost 45-degree walls to accommodate even some of the windows that you guys required. So we aligned a lot of the floor plans interior wise to accommodate some of these openings. And so I would love if you guys could take that into consideration also, that we did our best in, accommodating you guys, and that you guys could let this fourth floor window on the Henry Johnson third and second floor, if you guys could let that one go, that'd be appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any further questions? All right, so this one also, I guess we will make final decision on April 5th. Okay, and that is the last item on the agenda. Is there any other business to come before the board? Brad, do you have anything?
No, I mean, I guess just an update for the board. I mean, we are still working on a daily basis with Mr. Stein to try and deal with his waiver request. So just an update there. He is not to date informed us of any offsite parking that he's been able to find. And, we did send a correspondence just speaking to, our concerns with what we'd heard from the community, and that it needed to be a collaborative process, that we would, potentially be open to some sort of a transportation demand management program, but it had to be done in collaboration with the community. We haven't seen any efforts to do that yet. So no real update there.
Okay, do you want to give the board any update on staffing? Other than
no, we've lost some staff and collectively a lot of experience. It's part of the reason we're maybe not as organized tonight. So I apologize for that, but we are, we got a lot of projects and we're down a couple, and the job market is very, very interesting. So, I don't know necessarily when that's going to be rectified. So,
okay,
do what we can.
All righty, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well, just one point I want to add, Brad, Al's not working right now.
There's no way, Roman. There's no way.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
See you later.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you all. Take care.
All right,
See ya.
night.
All right, have a good night.